So today we're going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to install a custom stair runner with binding like this one right here. And what a shaped runner is basically a stair runner that is shaped to your exact staircase, like this one where we've got winders and of course a landing. If you want to see how we shape that, we have got another video on that, so you can learn how to do it. And just remember, if you're enjoying any of our videos at any time, chuck us a like, a comment and a little subscribe. Now let's get on with fitting it. So our first job is to start cutting and installing our grippers. We like to start on the straight flight, which is this section here. So we need to get the width we need for our grippers. And to get that measurement, the way we do it is to measure inside of our binding. So we take our tape measure and we measure across. For us, it's going to be 535. So we can now cut some grippers to install at 535. And the way we get the amount is just to count how many risers and how many treads we've got. So we've got 9 on our straights, so that means we're going to need 18 pieces of gripper because you need 2 per stair. So we've got our grippers and we're ready to cut. Before we do, we just want to cover, we are using a short pin gripper. There are many lengths of gripper you can use, and that's all going to be dependent on the style and thickness of carpet that you choose. Now it's just a case of transferring our measurement onto our grippers. Make yourself a little mark. And now that we've got our mark, we take ourselves some gripper shears, which are these, and then we're going to cut that nice and square. And now that we've got our first one cut, we're not going to use the tape measure anymore. We're just going to keep this as a template to cut the rest. So we just stack it next to it and make our cut. Right, so we're going to get on with cutting the rest. Just remember, if you are going to use the little template method, keep the exact same one for all of your cuts. Don't swap and change. So let's get these cut. Right, now that we've cut all of our grippers down to size, it's time to start placing them where they need to go. So we need to get our gripper in the centre of our tread, and a quick method to do that is to take the width of our gripper piece, measure the width of our stair, and then deduct this measurement from this measurement, and then all we do is divide it by 2. And now that we've got our measurement, you can either put a pencil line or just line your tape up with your measurement, and then if it's correct, it should be exactly the same measurement on both sides, which we've got. So we're going to take that measurement and mark the side of our treads all the way down. Right, now that the gap on the left and the right side has been set, we now need to get the distance from our riser to our gripper and from our tread to our gripper. And to get that gap, we need to do a couple of things. We need to measure the thickness of your carpet. So get a tape measure and measure from the bottom to the top of your pile. So ours is 7mm, for example, so we need to double that. So we want a 14mm gap behind our gripper, top and bottom. But if you've got any joints between pieces going down your stairs, you need to have a gap of 1.5 times. So for this example, it'd be 10.5mm. So we measure our gap, and then we're going to be using a staple gun and putting one staple in one side. And then we measure our other side, and put a staple in, and then a staple in the centre. Now if you haven't got a staple gun like this one, you can just use the nails that are in the gripper once you've set your distance, and then measure the top. So because we do this all the time, we've got a key selection that actually sets our gaps. So this is the one we need. And then all we do with these is sit them in the back side of our gripper and pin it into place. And it's the same for the top piece. So we just turn that into that gap and these sit on top like so. And just pin that in position. And don't forget, all the time we're setting these gaps, we're always coming to them marks that we made on the right hand side here. So that's all of our straight grippers done and fixed in place. When it comes to our winders, it's slightly different. And the easiest way for you to get the placement and size is to take your piece of carpet that's going there, that's already been shaped. And when we shaped this, we had a block for our sizing, which you can see in our other video. We used that to loosely set our piece of carpet in position, lightly hook it on, and if you just pull that down there and use a pencil that you can rub out and just mark the 2 sides, we now know exactly where we need to put our grippers. So now that we've cut them, we're going to set this in at the centre of our 2 marks, as we did with the straights. And then using our gripper key, we're going to set this to 1.5 times, because this is a join, as are most of these. And you can either do that with this, or you can measure it, same thing. So we'll get this in. Right, so if you are going to use something like this, the way these work is that's no joins. And then if you have got a join, you use the larger corner to set your bottom gripper, and then we use this thinner edge, which takes into the account for the thickness of your gripper, and that sits along flat like that, and that gives us a 1.5 times gap. So now you can visually see this is going to have a join, tighter gap, and this bigger gap is where we've not got a join in our carpet.
So now it's time to underlay our stairs, and the first job is to underlay the straights. And to get the size is the same as the gripper. Right, so now it's time to cut your underlay. We're going to actually work off the factory edge, because 99% of the time they're completely straight. Right, we're going to mark our underlay at each end. So now that we've got our marks either end, we're going to just grab a straight edge and tie the 2 marks together. And we're going to strike a line, making sure that it don't move. Right, so now that we've marked our underlay, how we cut that, we can use our straight blade with something to protect the floor underneath, or we can use shears. These are specifically designed to cut carpet and underlay. Right, when you cut a length of this off, it usually covers 3 to 4 stairs.
Right, now that Brad has cut our underlay down to size, there's a couple of methods to install this. We're going to be using a multi-purpose spray adhesive, so gluing it down, because we're doing a double stick installation. But if you're not, you can just use staples. So we're going to be applying our glue to this section in between our grippers. And then we just take our underlay, flush up to our grippers, pushing it into our adhesive, and then pull it down to our next piece of gripper, and then we push it into our adhesive again. And as I've pulled it down, I've lined the 2 sides up with our gripper, and that's how we keep it nice and straight. So now that our underlay is stuck into position, we can take ourselves a straight knife, which is that, and then we're going to cut along the top of our gripper on the riser. So if we just pull this left corner, you can see the top, so we line our blade up with that, and then we're sitting our blade on top of our gripper, and we just pull along like so, and then we stop here and do the same from the other end, and then we should be left with a nice tight fitting piece of underlay like that. Right, we're going to continue doing that same process down the rest of our straights, and we'll show you how we underlay our winders. Right, so with our winders, we like to sit them underneath our underlay like this, so that's going to be there. And then we're going to be cutting along this green line here, or whatever colour your binding is, along our underlay, and that's going to give us the perfect template. The reason we don't do it upside down on its back is because 1, you can't get the size, and 2, we need the underlay to be the correct side up. And that is what we want from each of our winders, so we're going to do the same on each of our pieces and get ready to install them. Right, now that we've got our pieces cut, it's slightly different when we install these, so we're going to line the top of the underlay with the gripper, and we're going to just hook it onto there loosely, and then we're going to pull it down the front and make sure that we're lined up with the front gripper here, which we are. And once we're in position, unlike the straights, we're going to hold our knee on the nose of the tread and peel the top, making sure it doesn't move. We can then trim the top, and then we're going to trim the bottom same as we trimmed the top. So we did get a little bit carried away, and we nearly missed a little top tip for you, which is this black cloth tape. So on any openings, so like here, we can see down the side of our stairs, because we're not profiling our carpet, we're having a stretch fit, we need to use some black cloth tape. So I'll show you exactly what I mean with this little offcut. So if we was to have that fitted, stretch fit, when you look through the side, you can just see this white edge of our underlay. But if we take ourselves some black cloth tape, just wrap it around that edge. And now that we've added a bit of cloth tape, rather than that white line, it just looks like a shadow behind the carpet. So we're going to use that little tip on anywhere you think you might be able to see through down the side of the carpet. So for instance, these 4 treads here, you might just see down the side. So rather than risk it, we're just going to chuck some tape on. Takes 2 seconds. It's going to look lovely. That's all our prep done. It's time to start fitting our runner. So first thing we're going to be doing is fitting our riser, which is here. And what we've done is we've prepped our edge. So we've folded these over, glued them, and we've got this finished. And don't worry, we're going to show you that process a bit further down the stairs because we're going to need to. So let's get this in position. So we start off by getting it into position. We then fold this forward. And then using our adhesive, we're going to spray between the 2 bands, and including the riser, we're going to do the same on both. And then starting from the top, we're going to tuck that up nice and tight, and then start sticking it to our riser. And now that our riser is stuck, we're going to take ourselves a hot melt gun, and we're going to hot melt the bands back. And then we're going to push that flat onto our stair, just while that glue dries. And then it's the same for the other side. And just remember, any of the tools that we are using in this video will be listed in the description below. So if you need to grab anything, go and check it out. And now that these and the back is stuck, we can now tidy up this little section here. So we're just going to be using a really strong paint scraper and just tuck in that top section away, and it's going to leave us with a lovely finish under our nose. And now, just to be sure this never pulls down, we're going to use our staple gun, and we're going to put some staples along the top. Just be careful where you place them, so you want to pick in between your pile, so that way it's never going to get seen. And using this method, that is how we get the perfect start to installing our stair runner. Now that our riser's finished, we're going to be taking the slack from the bottom, pushing it forward like so, and then using our stair bolster, which is one of these, we're going to be bolstering into the corner of our stairs. And you haven't got to go mad because we're stuck. We're just trying to get the shape. So at this stage, if you was doing a stretch fit install, you could just carry on stretching this down into each stair, but because we're doing a double stick install where we're gluing down to our underlay, we're going to take some different steps. And to do that, we take our roll of carpet, fold it back so we can get access to the underside, and then either using F3 or a spray glue on our treads, we then apply that all over, and that includes our carpet or our runner. And as we bring our carpet down to stick it into our glue, we just want to be double checking we are central to our stair. So for us, we're absolutely perfect. If you're not, you can just twist as you come down into your glue to keep that gap, and you might have to adjust it as you go down anyway. And once we're happy with our tread, we can just bring this back up now. So now it's time to fix our riser piece. Unlike the top, we're only going to be spraying the gripper because we are stretch fit in the front, and this is just for an extra bit of protection to stop it coming off in the future. So we're going to pull the riser into position, and then we're going to use our stair bolster to bolster down. We're not trying to go into the corner, we're going down onto that gripper. So we start in the centre, like that, and as you can see these creases, and this centre section stretched, and we're going to work our way left and right doing that same process. And then we'll go to the left. And then once we've got it stretched down, we want to bring some slack from the step below. And then we're going to start using our rubber mallet. And then we're going to go in at 45 degrees and aim for the corner. You ain't got to go crazy with this. We're just trying to shape it now. And that goes all the way across into our band. And then that accounts for the left as well. And now we can use our paint scraper again to put some nice creases into our banding. So if we just sit that over there and tap that like that, and the same on this side, as you can see, that gives us a really nice crease for when we carry on. And once we're happy with this step, we can now do the same process again. So we're going to be pulling it up, pushing the carpet up out of our way, and then using our adhesive to spray the tread and our carpet between the bands. And remember, we're always checking these gaps. And then we push our carpet into our glue. And another little tip, if you take your stair bolster and just scrub it sideways over these pins in our gripper, sometimes it can just give you a much smoother finish near your grippers. Right, so we've got as many straights as we can, and we've come to our very first join. And the way that we do our join, we take our stair bolster and we crease the two corners where the banding is. And then we're going to take our banding and we're going to unpeel it, pulling the stitching out, up to where we've just creased it. We're then going to cut along that crease we made, but only as far as the edge of our banding, which is there. And then we're going to cut that off. So as you can see, our banding's just loose now. So we're going to do that on both sides. So now that I've removed these corners of carpet, I'm just going to take a little bit of the back of the binding off, like so, on both sides. Now we can fit this as we did the rest. So we can now remove this centre section of carpet using our straight knife. So we're just going to push it in between the gripper. And then we come from the other side, same process. And we can remove that section. And you should be left with something like this. So all we're going to do is reduce this bit of banding or binding down to the front edge of that gripper. So we just use some scissors here. Like that. Doesn't have to be 100%. The same with this side. And once we've got this little section all cut down and ready, we can then take our hot melt gun, pull this side forward, and then we're just going to glue with hot melt the corner behind. And then we take our bolster and push this down into that corner and then just hold it while that glue sets. And for the piece that's going to be joining to all that prep, what we do, we put ourselves a straight edge and then we've left this banding long, as you can see. And then again with our hot melt gun, we're going to be then gluing this over to the back side like this. And once we've got that folded and glued down, we just want to put a little bit more over the top of the edge, just to prevent it coming back up in the future. And then you can flatten it off. If you just get your stair bolster, push that on it flat, that's plenty to cool that down. And don't worry, it won't damage your bolster. And then we peel that off, and that's what we should be left with. And what that leaves is this lovely edge on the front, ready to be joined. Right, so now that we've got our straights in, it's time to move on to our winders. So we get our winders, we place them into position, and then we're going to use our tape to check the space that you shaped your winders to. So once we're happy that our binding lines up and we've got our equal gap on this edge, if you just hold it with your knee on the front nose, we're going to be tacking the front edge. And the reason we only stick this front edge is so that we can work on this connecting piece. So that's going to be joining to our previous step. So our previous step has been prepared like the one we showed you above. So we can then pull our banding back like this. So we just unpeel it. And then we're going to cut the carpet, not the binding itself, flush with the stair behind, but only up to the edge of the binding. So I'll show you exactly what I mean now. So we just cut this small section out. So you should be left with something that looks like that. We can then pull our binding back up, and then we're going to shorten that down so it's about 1 centimetre longer than where our cut mark is. So once we've got it all cut down, we're going to use our hot melt gun to just stick this back over on itself. That's what we should be left with on the front side. And if you just test fit it, we're not actually fitting it, that's what we want. So we're going to repeat the process on the other side and get ready to fit this. Right, so now both sides are ready. Last thing we need to do is trim down the actual carpet. So we're going to be doing a side cut, which is like this. And we're going to be leaving between 5 and 10 mil to tuck. And once we've got that back cut down, we can peel it all back to that front that's already glued and finish gluing this, making sure we don't get glue on that carpet behind. And then we're just going to push this all flat. And then using our stair tool, we can tuck this away. And the last step before we stretch this riser down is to get our hot melt again. And we're just going to glue these side sections down onto this thread and onto the previous bit of carpet. And if you use this method, you're going to be left with a perfect joint that's not going to fray. And for any long unsecured edges like this one on the winder, we get our hot melt and run a bead through the centre of the binding underneath, obviously. So we just peel that back, do a little bead all the way down to the nose. And then we just hold that flat. Right, now it's time to move on to our quarter landing or even your half landing if that's what you've got. So we're going to line up our binding first. And once our bindings are lined, we can use our tape measure to check the gap around the outside. And that is perfect. And once we're happy, we're going to put our knees onto half of it, pull it back up to yourself and spray the underlay section. And once we've glued that first half, we want to just double check that it hasn't moved. And once you're happy, then we can move on to gluing the second half. Right, now that that's fitted, the only difference with this one is before we go stretching down our nose, we're going to be running the hot melt around the whole binding area on the outside. So I'll just demonstrate how I do it on this long run here. So I'll just fold it back, sit my gun in about the centre, and then run the glue all the way down. And the reason we do this is for things like when you're hoovering or vacuuming, it's not going to be pulling up everywhere, and then when you're coming up and down, there's no chance of you accidentally tripping and pulling this up. So it gives the illusion it's just sat there, but really it's fixed down. Right, so on this riser, it's a little bit different because it's going down to a finished floor. We've shut that gap up. We're still going to glue it. And we're still going to bolster it in. So now that we're all hooked in, unlike the rest, we're going to be using our staple gun and stapling along the gripper because it's very common for this last one to unhook itself and come free.
And that's it, that's the stair runner video complete. I hope this has been a massive help to you guys. Just remember to hit the like button, drop a comment if we've helped, and hit that subscribe button.
See you later!